Gear Seekers, I'm Nick. We're checking out another ITX board here on the channel, and I know that in the last motherboard overview we said that we're not going to do them anymore here on Gear Seekers, but we did a YouTube communities poll and it seems that you guys still want them here. So without further ado, let's take a look at a new B660 board from ASUS. It's the ROG STRIX B660-I gaming Wi-Fi, but this board does appear to be fairly interesting, but it's got a big catch. So let's find out what that is. But as usual with our motherboard content, these videos are not reviews. They're just overviews so we get an idea of what's physically in the box of these boards, what's on the board. But today, I have to give you my honest opinion on this one. Let's get into it. All right, ladies and gents, here it is, the ASUS ROG STRIX B660-I gaming Wi-Fi. But let's get that motherboard out of the box so we can take a closer look at all the things. First up, we've got a USB 2.0 splitter cable. This is pretty handy if you're using something like an RGB controller and a liquid cooler that needs it. So yeah, it's nice to see this in the box. There's also this is an extension cable for the front panel audio connector. Because the connector is in such a weird spot, this is very nice to have. There's also a pair of SATA or SATA cables for your 2.5-inch SSDs or your spinning rush drives. There's also a set of M.2 screws for the two M.2 slots on this board. You heard that right, not one, but two. There's also a bunch of cable ties or zip ties, basically for cable managing, especially good if you're building in a small form factor case. It's nice that these are additional. There's also this ROG keyring. This may or may not be your cup of tea, but it's included. There's this round circular plastic device that has no business being in a motherboard box in 2022. Get rid of this, please. We don't need this. Next up is the antenna for the built-in Wi-Fi 6 and the Bluetooth. There's an included user guide. This is pretty handy because if you've never built before or you've built plenty of systems, this will help you get started, shows you where everything is, what everything is, and some basic BIOS configuration. There's this little card that says, "Get ready to rock the gaming world with ROG STRIX." I mean, if you really want to read this, you can pause this and read this for yourself. I mean, whatever. There's also this little motherboard layout guide. This is actually pretty handy because it shows you exactly what everything is and where it is on the board without having to dig through the manual. So this is great at a glance. There's also a sheet of ROG stickers. Yep, it's included. And last but not least, let's unsheath the ASUS ROG STRIX B660-I gaming Wi-Fi and take a bit of a closer look at all the things on the board. Are you ready? Let's jump in. First up, we've got 4 SATA or SATA ports for your 2.5-inch SSDs or your spinning rush drives. There's a front panel USB 3.2 header. There's a front panel USB Type-C front panel header. There's also the connectors for all your lights and all your switches to let you know your system's up and running. And there's also the 24-pin power connector to send juice to your brand new board. There's a 4-pin 12-volt RGB header as well as a 3-pin 5-volt addressable RGB header. There's 3 PWM fan headers. Look at this, Gigabyte. This is how you do it on an ITX board. You don't need those stupid breakout cables. And last but not least, an 8-pin EPS power connector to send juice to your brand new CPU. Underneath the heatsink for the M.2, you'll find a front panel audio header. There's also a USB 2.0 header. That's why it has the extension cables, because it's in kind of a weird place. And last but not least, there's a full by 16 PCIe Gen 5 slot. That's right. It's a Gen 5 slot, not Gen 4. Now, if we take a look at the VRM layout, this is an 8+1 phase digital VRM setup. You can see that there's more than adequate cooling for the top VRM layout and for the other VRM layout that is underneath the I/O cover. It's got plenty of heatsink to dissipate that heat, but let's pop open that LGA 1700 socket just in case you've never seen it before. We take a bit of a closer look at that. Now, obviously this uses Intel's LGA 1700 socket, which supports Intel's 12th gen CPUs, so all the way up to the i9, although you don't get the overclocking functionality. One thing ASUS does differently to the other board manufacturers is it's got cooler mounting for both LGA 1200 and 1700. So if you've got another cooler, you'd be good to go. We've got a whole video that covers all of this as well, and I'll put a link to that in the description. If we flip the board over, you can see that there's not much going on here. There is one thing though that I'll come back to in a minute that might interest you. Now, the one thing with this board is this is a DDR5 only board, and it supports up to 64 gigs of DDR5 memory, up to 6200 mega transfers overclocked. But let's remove the heatsink for the M.2 slot that's on the top of the board so we can take a bit of a closer look. As you can see, it's got a PCIe Gen 4 M.2 slot on the top side of the board with a thermal pad for heat transfer underneath it as well. It also uses this awesome little clip mechanism, so you don't need to screw the drives in, and it's good that they've done this on the B660 boards as well. It's also got these markings on the PCB that tell you exactly what the M.2 slot is capable of. The trick up the sleeve of the B660-I gaming Wi-Fi is it also has a second M.2 slot on the back side of the board, and this is also a PCIe Gen 4 slot. In terms of rear I/O, we've got a DisplayPort connector, we've got HDMI, we've got a bunch of USB 2.0 connectors. There's 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, USB 3.2, two USB Type-C ports, the antenna connectors for the built-in Wi-Fi 6, and also audio outputs and inputs for the integrated audio. However, there's no optical or SPDIF output here, as well as that standard integrated I/O shield. Alright ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed this overview of the ASUS ROG STRIX B660-I gaming Wi-Fi. Wow, that is an absolute tongue twister. I seriously can't say B660 because it's B660. Okay, I can say it. There's not heaps wrong with me, just a couple things. In terms of features, compared to the Aorus board that we checked out the other day, this one has two M.2 slots. So it's making me think, why didn't Gigabyte just put two M.2 slots on the board? Like this one has two PCIe Gen 4 M.2 slots, one on the front and one on the back. Come on Gigabyte, what are you doing? Like, the other thing is with the ROG STRIX board, believe it or not, the US pricing, this board is way cheaper than the Gigabyte board. Like, I'm talking like a lot cheaper, but I'm gonna come back to that. In terms of the feature set with this board, from what I can tell, it's looking pretty good. And I mentioned this in the Aorus or Gigabyte video, whatever, that with these ITX boards, especially the B660 boards, all the heatsink sizes are reduced. So if we just take a look at the height, you can see that the M.2 heatsink is only slightly higher than the PCIe slot, which is actually quite nice because with the Z690 version of the ROG STRIX board and also the Gigabyte board, we saw that this heatsink was a little bit higher than the I/O cover, which is kind of ridiculous. So we get lots of questions about cooler compatibility with these boards, but this is looking pretty standard for most other ITX boards that we've seen from previous generations. So with that in mind, I think that this one is going to be much the same with cooler compatibility. The main difference with all of these new ASUS boards for 12th gen is, if you look closely, they have the holes drilled for both LGA 1200 and 1700. So you can get away with putting a lot of different coolers on here. Now we've also got lots of questions asking about specific coolers. I think we're going to do a video where we do like a roundup of all these ITX boards and see what coolers fit all of the main 12th gen boards, because that's what you guys have been asking us to do. So we'll do it, we'll rip out some Noctua coolers, we'll do all of the things, and we'll see if those coolers clear the heat sinks. AIOs aren't really a massive problem with these, but A lot of people don't want liquid cooling, they just want air cooling. Okay, so what's the catch with the ROG STRIX board? Okay, this is a big one. So in terms of pricing, the ROG STRIX B660-I gaming Wi-Fi is going for $219 US or 349 Aussie dollars at the time of filming this video. Actually, it's the same price as the Gigabyte board here in Australia, but wildly different for the US price. The biggest catch with this board, ladies and gents, is it's DDR5 only. Now, this alone does not make a lot of sense to me, especially on the B660 chipset and platform. You know, it's a cheaper board, that's great, but the RAM is gonna push the price of any system that you build with this board all the way up. I mean, a good DDR5 RAM kit, in Australia at least, is gonna set you back about $400 to $500 for a 16 gig kit. 32 gigs looks like it's the standard now, and you're looking at $600 and up, just for memory. I'm not quite sure what ASUS was thinking doing a DDR5 board with B660, especially, and this is probably me being wrong, but especially with them not having a DDR4 variant. At least at the time of filming this, I couldn't find one. A little bit disappointing from ASUS, but ultimately, if you're looking to move forward and invest in DDR5, this is better value than the Aorus board that we checked out the other day. Anyways, ladies and gents, if you liked the video, you know what to do. Smash the subscribe button, hit the like button, and let us know what you think about this ROG board. I think it's pretty interesting. We're gonna be doing a build with it, obviously, because, I mean, that's what we do around here, but I don't know, man, DDR5, that's a little bit confusing to me. Anyways, if you like the music as well, you can get it by clicking that join button. You can get early access to videos like this one over on Floatplane. Once again, thank you so very much for watching. I'm your boy with Nick. I'm your boy with Nick. I'm with myself. I'm your boy Nick with Gear Seekers and Main Bite. You peak, we seek, and that's the main bite. I did double outros, Claire, depending on how I'm gonna cut the video for either channel, but here's the truth. It's gonna be the same today. It's gonna be the same. It's okay, but we will put them on both channels just for people who are new to the other channel, right? Does that make sense? So, yeah, really, really interesting board. Shame about that DDR5. Anyway, I'm gonna go. If there's anything on my shirt, it's actually cat food.
You've been eating cat food again?
No, I was giving Binny the little licky thing, you know, the little licky things, and it like splattered out, and I was like, I'm not gonna clean my shirt before I film. Why would I do that? I'm like authentic guy. I mean, if you tell people you're an authentic guy, then you're not, right? I don't know. Watch one of these things up here. It's a video. See you guys. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. I'm eating beans.